All right, folks, there are people who made poor life choices. I know they made poor life choices because they're not in this room. So right now, as loud as you can, let's give it up for Jennifer Bourne and all the folks organizing and putting on. See, in the other room, they're just thinking, what are they doing in that room that we're not doing in this room? See? We're going to get started in just a minute. So come in, have a seat. There's a couple of spots in different parts of the room, still chairs open, and we'll get started in just a minute.
That would have been awesome. You would have just stood there, just stared at him for 5 minutes. Don't say anything. Just that smile.
I can do this. Yeah, not yet.
When this thing starts to blink red,
Okay, but don't start it yet because we haven't started. It's not 9 yet.
Are you my announcer in here?
yes.
You want to make sure this announcement.
It's 100 million. He said 100 millimeter. I'm like, no, it's 100 million. But volunteers. Volunteers. Let me, hey. Calm down. No.
Well, you can just push that right there just to start. Be awesome. Thank you.
Our goal next year is 200 millimeters. We measure inches, y'all.
Hosting is a game of inches. And that's why we're in millimeters. It turns out that when you're stressed, you can end up making bad choices. I know this because I was on vacation in Cabo San Lucas with my family when I got an email from my boss at the time who said, I'd like to get you on a video conference with this other company that we are thinking about buying. And I know you're on vacation, and you must understand how big a deal it is for me to interrupt your vacation, but I need you to be available in 2 days at this time to get on a call. And the only thing that ran through my head was, I need a haircut. I mean, if we're going to be on a video call, I was traveling without a hat. My hair was way too long. I hadn't shaved. I was on vacation. It didn't seem to matter. And now suddenly, I need to be in a professional environment. And I need to be on a screen and look professional. And so I was highly stressed. And so my wife looked at me and said, I'm pretty sure at this resort, and we were staying at a 5-star resort in Cabo San Lucas, I'm pretty sure at this resort they have a spa. You can get a haircut there, I bet. So I opened up the pamphlet in the room that gave me all the details of the spa. I should mention that I am Latino and that I do speak Spanish, but there are many words, vocabulary in the spa world that I just don't know. And I didn't know how many of those I didn't know until in that moment of stress, I picked up the phone, I hit 0, I got the gal on the phone and I said, I want to talk to the spa. They redirected me to someone and I said, I want a haircut. And they said, oh, do you want the men's spa package? At that moment, I probably should have asked questions. What's in a men's spa package? How much does it cost? But I just said yes. And so I got booked for the spa package that afternoon. And I should also mention that I don't attend spas ever. And so I went, and I was going because I wanted the haircut. So I said, I got this. I'm going to go get a haircut. So I went in, and they took me in. They gave me water with cucumbers in it. I didn't know that was a thing. And I had the cucumber water, and then I went down the stairs and into the salon, and they put me in this beautiful chair with way more mirrors than I've ever had at a barbershop, and they got ready to cut my hair. And she didn't use clippers at all. She was using scissors to cut every single hair on my head. And so it was a fairly long event, but she cut all the hair and I started to look good, right? And then she said, now come over this way. And she took me to a table and she's like, okay, you're gonna lay down this way, right? And so it was kind of a chair table thing and I'm leaning forward, but my head was clearly open and available. And she started massaging my face. And I was like, wow, I should get my hair cut at a men's spa way more often. This is amazing. Like she's rubbing my face. And then she starts putting a cream on my face, and it was very cool. And I was very aware of how cool this felt and how wonderful this was. And then she said, and I don't know the exact Spanish translation, English-Spanish translation, but it sounded like this might pinch for a second. And right about then, about 7,000 crabs started peeling the flesh off my face. There were pinches everywhere. There were no physical crabs. I couldn't see anything, but I felt them, and they were tearing my face off of my face. I don't know if you've seen Face Off, but I was in that moment, and my skin was coming off, and I started crying. And I was like, this is horrible. And I felt abused. And so when we finished, she said, do you want to leave a tip? I said no. And then I went back to the room. And my wife knew something was different right away, not just because the tears in my eyes, but because my face was bright red. And she's like, what did you go do? I thought you were going to get a haircut. I said, that's what I thought too, but they did something else. And she's like, yeah, you had a chemical peel. I'm like, what is a chemical peel? And does it feel like 700 lobsters taking the skin off my face? She goes, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. She's like, they took the top layer of your flesh off. That's what it does. It's like peel, but it's using chemical. So when I tell you, right, that no one naturally makes good decisions when they're stressed, it's from personal experience. I had some anxiety, I had some stress, I wanted my hair cut, and then I made some really poor choices in life. And I want to spend the time this morning talking with you about the one thing you have to get really right, but I want to turn it for just a second to say, what if you and I are the people that are creating that stress in other people's lives? Now, granted, I don't think we're torturing people with 700 crabs peeling off faces, but what if we're creating the environments within which, the context where we've introduced enough stress to someone that they're not making great choices? In my house, a lot, I'm the speaker. I'm the one that talks. I'm the one that's constantly saying things. It's not always clear that my children are listening. It's more an issue that they're not grasping what it is I'm saying. My children ran into our new home just a couple years ago. They started playing a game called Treasure Map. And Treasure Map apparently is played in such a way that someone runs through the house and finds a place and grabs a set of markers and draws a big X on new carpet so that other people can run through the house and find where the hidden treasure is. And so I said something stupid like, you can't use the black markers on the carpet. I felt like I was clear. The next X was in red. Being the moron that I am, I said, you can't use any markers on the carpet. And so the next X was on my son's wall. At that point, my wife stepped in and said, the only place where you can use markers, pens, or crayons is on a piece of paper that I give you. And that is how we know she's a smarter llama. What we say or what we write Whether you're a freelancer, whether you run an agency, whether you do design or development, whether you're writing proposals or copy, or you're a public speaker creating a talk, it's not just what you write, it's not just what you say, it's what other people hear. And sometimes the way we say what we say, the way we write what we write, the way we craft our proposals or the copy we put on web pages actually creates stress because of the way people are hearing or reading what it is we're writing. Does that make sense? So the first thing we need to understand is the listener, the person who's hearing or reading the message that we've crafted, and their motivation. And what I want to do is walk you through two kinds of people, two paradigms that I think are particularly important when we're crafting our message. And the first is people who love to achieve goals, they love to reach goals. They are people who are toward people. Now I know it's early morning and some of you haven't had your coffee, so I'm just going to ask this small call and response. I want you to repeat after me and say toward people. Ready? On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, toward people. Exactly. Now, some of you did not say toward people. You're not toward people. You were not trying to go after the goal. Everybody else was, right? Everybody else was like, he told me to do something and I did it, right? Those of you that did it, right? Some of you are just peer pressure, right? The person next to me is going to look at me and think I'm weird, so I'm going to say it anyway. But most of us that are motivated to achieve the goal, we are like, define the goal, tell me the goal, and I want to go after that goal. How many of you have ever run a marathon? Right? Or a half marathon? Anything that's more than a couple feet, and I think you're my hero. So anyway, if you run, right, if you, like, and you volunteer, I'm not talking about running away from the police, but if you run on purpose, like by choice, and you run for miles, you're a toward person, right? Because you don't just wake up one morning out of the blue, having never run, and go, I think I'm going to go run for miles and miles. You set a goal, and then you start working up to that goal until you can get to the goal, right? You're toward people. You know toward people, right, at work, because they're the ones who have, they're listening to stuff in the, podcasts and motivational tapes. They have vision walls on their wall. They've posted up pictures. I walked into an office of a guy one time, and I knew a lot about this guy, but I did not realize he was this kind of toward person. And he had like the future car he wanted, and the future house he wanted, and the future bride he wanted. I'm like, aren't you married? Right? It was a little weird, right? But he had the photos on the wall. This is my, my vision wall, he called it. And I was like, wow. All right, I hope your wife doesn't come to visit you for lunch. But it was one of those things where you're like, this is a person who's so motivated that every day looks at the wall and goes, that's what I'm going towards. And towards people, when we write or speak for towards people, we need to be able to give them the reason to move, the reason to act, the goal, the objective. Some of you write copy, and when you write copy or when you're putting stuff on the website or when you're writing a proposal, you talk about what I'm going to do. This is what we call the feature language, right? You write feature language, and then someone comes along and says, no, you should write benefits language. Benefits language is not just here's the feature, but here's the benefit of using this feature. And so some people say, you need to write benefits language. And I say, no. For toward people, you need to write destination language. Destination language isn't, here's the benefit. It's, here's what it looks like when it's all done and you're enjoying the fruits of your labor. That's how we motivate people. Towards people need destination language. Towards people need to know, hey, how do you sleep at night? Right? If you host a whole bunch of websites for people and you are stressed about the security of those environments, you should be thinking about my friend Tony's company, Security, because they will help you sleep at night. Why do I use the word sleep at night? Because that's the destination. The destination is the actual benefit, the result of the benefit of trusting someone else to remediate all the malware that's on your websites. Destination language is not the details of the remediation. It's not the details of the firewalls. It's not the details of the staff that are cleaning up. No. It's the, hey, you don't have to worry anymore. That's towards people. They need destination language. And destination language is all about what happens when they've gotten there. What's the result? If you want to talk about, there's a marathon, there's a half marathon. I don't know what kind of crazy people do this, but apparently you can run, I think it's a 5 or maybe a 10K inside of Disneyland, and then the next day a half marathon inside of Disneyland, and then the next day a marathon inside Disneyland. I may have the details incorrect because I don't care about those people, but I'm just kidding. They're all people are good people, but these people are crazy people, right? Because they decide to go run and then run again and then run the next day, and you're like, that's insane. But you know what they have? They get these huge medallions that are Star Wars related, that when my wife and I happened to be walking through Disneyland, walking through the park, when we saw someone with this huge Millennium Falcon, like it's massive, on their chest. And I was like, Melissa, go ask them where they got that. And then one said, well, it's because I ran all the 3 events here at Disneyland the last 3 days, whatever. And Melissa comes back, she goes, you'll never have one. I'm like, why are you such a downer? I bet if I give them enough money, they'll give it to me, right? But but those people, right? They were wearing their towards ultimate achievement, their destination badge. I did it, and everyone else looks at them and goes, wow, that's amazing, that's incredible. Nobody at that moment wants to talk about the training that went into running that, right? Towards people want the destination. Tell me what happens at the end. Oh, at the end, I get to walk through Disneyland with this, super big medallion and says, I'm one of the people that did this. I achieved this, right? And you go, that's an amazing destination. You'll have all sorts of people that look at it and go, how do I get one of those? Those are toward people. And most of the time, even if you're talking to a stranger, even if you're interacting with someone you don't know, if you can figure out if they're toward people, you know how to message. Does that make sense? Right? We clear on it? All right. There are also away people. Okay? I'm not going to ask the away people, right, to say away, except I'll tell you this, right? Right now, I want you to think away, but don't do it because I said so. Do it because if you don't, someone's going to know you didn't. See? And then you might be ridiculed, and nobody wants to be ridiculed, right? That's how away people get motivated, because they don't want something to happen. They want to stay clear of something happening. They want to eliminate the risk of something happening. Away people are not motivated the same way. Oh, you're doing that on purpose. I was like, what did I push? Away people are not motivated toward things, because then they would be toward people. Away people are motivated, right, to stay clear of things, to get away from things, right? You might be selling security or security and website remediation, right? But for those people, you'd be talking about something completely different, right? You're like, do you know how many websites get attacked by malware every single day? Do you want to be one of those websites? Do you want to? I watched my friend Tony get on stage at a conference where he talked about all the away people were loving it because he was just laying it on thick, right? He was not lying. Every one of the issues that he was highlighting about how dangerous the internet was, all of it was out there for everyone to hear. He just laid it up. And at the end, he opened up for Q&A, and this woman walked up to the microphone, and she was like, so why should we have a website at all, right? She clearly wasn't a away person, right? Away people are like, yeah, see, I totally get that. And that's why I do this, and I do this, and I do this. Toward people are like, I think you just don't want me to have a website, right? Away people, the way we talk to away people is that we eliminate risk. And so what we want to be able to do is talk about what is pain, what is challenge with it, and how do we help you avert it? There's an entire wealth of psychology known as loss aversion, right? And loss aversion, the little experiment was super silly, but quite powerful, right? I walk up to a person and I say, let's flip a coin. Heads, you give me $1. Tails, I give you $1, right? Do you want to do the experiment? And the person says, no. It's a 50-50 shot. What's wrong? They're like, I don't want to lose my $1. So you say, okay, let's do it, but heads, I get $1, tails, you get $2. Nope. And it has to go all the way up until, on average, people want a 5-to-1 return. People are so nervous of losing a single dollar that the upside needs to be 5x to give up the chance of losing $1, right? Those people are away people. It's loss aversion. They're like, no, I don't want at all the chance of losing something. Depending on what your product is, you may, and depending on who you are, you may be an away person or you may be a towards person, but the likelihood of your communication is that you only know how to communicate one way because of who you are. And so what happens? If you're an away person, you write away language. If you're a towards person, you write towards language. And because of that, you have cut your market in half. Doesn't matter if you're talking about proposals, website copy, doesn't matter if you're in a meeting and presenting, doesn't matter if you're doing a talk. You have cut your material in half. The applicability and the efficacy of the work that you're doing is cut in half because you, by default, are either a towards or an away person. And because of that, the way you communicate is one or the other. And fundamentally, when we're talking to people that we don't know, right, if you don't develop, right, how many of you have ever watched an NBA game? Right? Okay, so you're sports literate in my book. So if you've ever watched the NBA, it would be weird if you saw a basketball player dribbling down the court and passing and shooting who could only use one hand. I mean, it would be so stark that we would all recognize it and talk about it. And yet in business, some of us are only away people or only towards people, and we work with one hand. And nobody says, I think maybe we should rethink this. How do we know if someone is away or towards? Ask them this question. Just ask them this question, right? How are you or how are we going to define success? How they tell you the answer. It's not what they tell you, how they tell you the answer. Well, if we can escape this or this, we'll be good. Or if we can achieve this or this, we'll be good. They will tell you in the language of their answer, they will tell you whether they're away or toward people. Does that make sense? Yes? This is the interactive part. Yes. Awesome. All right. The other thing we need to understand is the source of their motivation. And you're like, wait, didn't we just talk about motivation? No. We talked about motivation. We didn't talk about the source of their motivation. Right? The source of someone's motivation is incredibly important. There are people who are internal referencers. Right? You know some of these people. Because these people, when they talk to you, when they define the standard of how do we know this is good, who is good, how do we define good, whatever, it comes up from the inside. They define what is good. Internal reference, right? I know what's good, I know what the standard of quality is, and I am going to define it, and I know how to achieve it. That's how it works, right? Internal referencers are guided by, so you listen to them talk, and they're not talking to you about what someone else said or what someone else did or whatever. They're talking to you as an internal referencer. They're talking to you about how they've defined it. Here's my framework. Here's how I think about it. Here's my standard. Here's what we need to do. Here's how I would like to see it happen. Great. Then you have external referencers, right? External referencers, completely different. My boss says this. My board says this. My board wants this. My boss wants this. I read this book. This guy says this, right? They define goals by external references. And it's going to be very, very important when you are communicating with other people to know, are you talking to an internal reference or external referencer? Right? How do we know which one they are? Ask them this question. How will we know, or how will you know when you've done well? How will you know when you have succeeded, right? Not how do we define success, but how do you know when you've done a good job, right? And they go, oh, well, my boss will like this, or well, I will feel that. Internal and external references can't help but communicate in a way that tells you who they are. Now, at this point, you're starting to think, wow, if I just asked one or two questions, you're telling me that I could figure out who is my audience, how they're interacting, and that could shape the way I message? And you go, yes, absolutely, right? I told you, right? Nobody makes good decisions when they're stressed. Why did I start with that? Because fundamentally, if you are communicating to someone who is a towards person and you're communicating as an away person, or if you are talking to an internal referencer by referencing someone external, like, you go into a meeting, you sit down, and you're like, well, your board is going to really like that, and they're an internal referencer, you are creating stress. Now, it's not stress on the order of like, oh my God, you're going to look horrible in some meeting and you need to go get a haircut and shave your face off. But it is stress nonetheless. And when we often try and help people make a buying decision, right? And in buying decision, I don't just mean the buy button on a website. I mean the proposal. I mean the pitch. In all these different ways, we are in places where we're asking someone to make a buying decision or a choice. And if you're asking them to make a choice, but you have created stress because you're communicating incorrectly, they're not going to push the button. Does that make sense? You need to shape the way, and everyone says, well, you just got to communicate well. Right. But what I'm trying to give you is a framework for how you do that and how you know you're doing it well. People get stressed. What do they get stressed about? Right? They get stressed because they are in actual pain. If you've ever gone to a doctor, I bought some new shoes. I bought some beautiful new shoes. These were hand-painted shoes. You may not know that you can buy shoes that are hand-painted, but you can. They're beautiful and amazing and expensive, and I was going to a fancy meeting, so I put on my fancy new shoes. Now, if you're a guy, you may not know that sometimes when you get new shoes, you need to scuff the soles. If you're a woman, you may know that already. But guys, we don't have those conversations. So I was at the top of the stairs, and I had not had this conversation with anyone. No one had told me, look at your brand new shoes and see if the bottoms are not scuffed. They weren't scuffed, so at the top of the stairs, I took a step and I hit the carpet and then I slipped. And I slipped all the way down the stairs and broke my hand. I broke my hand, but I still had a meeting an hour and a half away. So I got in the car with my long sleeve shirt buttoned up over my broken wrist or whatever, and then I drove to the meeting. And then I did the whole meeting, and at the end of the meeting, they said, you want to go out for coffee and hang out and talk about it? And I said, no, I need to drive back to the doctor because I think I broke my hand. They're like, well, why were you in the meeting? Well, because I had to go to the meeting, but now I got to get back to a doctor because I broke my hand. Why did I break my hand? Because I was in pain. And at that moment, I wanted to see someone who could solve my pain. There are people who have pain and they want a resolution. And the question is, are you providing that solution for people in pain? And do people in pain know that you're providing that solution? Do you realize if I was someone who sweated profusely, which I'm not, but if I was, and I went to a store online that, made shirts for people that sweat profusely, do you know what I would likely see? I would likely see nothing about that. I would see a beautiful picture of this thing, family, idyllic picture of a family, and then lower I'd see features and benefits, and nowhere would it say, by the way, we make incredible shirts for people who sweat too much and don't want to show off the fact that they're sweating so bad. That's pain. I have pain. Most of you don't start your copy with pain. Most of you don't start your presentations with pain. But people who are in pain don't care about all the rest of that stuff. People who are in pain want a resolution for the pain, and they want to know that you have a resolution for the pain. People also get stuck in a rut. They get stuck. I've seen this picture before. I'm in the same places I've always been. We're always this tight on funds. We're always struggling with this or that. People get stressed by fear. I don't want to act. I don't want to quit my job. I don't want to start a new entrepreneurial thing. I don't want to create a product. I don't want to do whatever. Because they're based in fear and they're held up. And ultimately other people are just impatient. When do we get the results? When do we get the results? I've been trying this for so long and I haven't seen it tick up. These are all the reasons why people are stressed. And because they're stressed, you know what they do? They pay people. That's what they do. They pay people. They pay people to solve a pain. They pay people to accelerate a result. They pay people to skip a failure. They pay people to reach a destination. They pay people who eliminate stress. And the thing is, right? We do these things. If you dig out deep down into all the arsenal of the customers you've ever worked with, all the people you've ever served, all the people that follow your blogs or that have worked with you, people that have hired you, people that have hired you a second time, it means they came back because they said, you're so good at something. I bet you have not asked them what they love about you. And if you have, I bet you've been surprised by what they said, because what they said is not what's your marketing copy on your website. What they said is not what's in your proposals, even though it should be. You have customers that come back to you a second and third time, and you rarely, because of your own anxiety, because of your own insecurity, you rarely ask them, why is it you keep coming back? You think that if you ask that question, they're going to start thinking, maybe I should go somewhere else. But you're like, no, I just want to know. Like, I love that you keep coming back, but I'd love to know, what is it about what we do or how we do it? What is it that keeps you coming back? And they say, what I really love is that when I talk to you, you don't do X, or, because they're away people, or you do this, right? And they're toward people. You help me achieve X, Y, and you go, great. Write it down. Ask a couple more people. And then put it in your proposal. Put it in your quotes. Put it on your website. Put it wherever you need to put it. Use it in your talks. Share it. And watch how other people react and start shaking their head going, yeah, I don't want that. I'm an away person too, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all, right? Or yes, I want that. That's where I'm trying to go. You solve an innumerable number of pains for people that you don't recognize. You've helped people get to goals that you don't recognize. You've helped them get out of their rut or cross over the fear that has held them back, and you don't know it. And part of what you have to do is ask them. Collect the data. If you're too nervous to ask them, hire a friend to ask them. Right? Because you think, ooh, they're not going to be honest with me. So hire a friend. Right? Call up a friend and say, I would like to pay you per phone call. I'm going to give you a list of all these people, and you're just going to call and say, hi, I'm working for so-and-so company, and you've hired them before, and I just have 3 questions for you if you just have a couple minutes. And at the end of this, after you've shared with me, and I read it back to you, if you don't want me to share with them, you just let me know. But if you want me to share with them, I'll be more than happy to. And they go, sure, okay. And then they ask the questions like, what do you hire them for? What do you like about them? What do you really appreciate? What have they done for you? You ask a couple questions, you collect the data, and it's amazing what you get back. And you go, okay, now I need to shape this as either away or towards internal or external reference. How do I shape this so that I can present myself, my marketing, my sales? I asked a customer of mine to take a bunch of quotes that we had gathered to put it on their quote material. Now, I want to be clear because I'm using the terms twice in one sentence. Testimonials. We put customer testimonials on the quote or proposal that they sent out. And they said, you know what? We've gotten every quote back signed almost immediately. You go, oh, why do you think that was? Well, because all your quotes were very away quotes. They were like, we eliminated this risk, we got away from it. Like, I love these guys because they get rid of this, they didn't have us do this, they steered us clear of this. And many of our customers are away people, and they saw the quotes and they were like, I want that result too. And they just signed and we were done. It wasn't even on a website copy, right? It was in a quote. And yet it becomes very, very powerful. Whether you're a coach, consultant, agency, product company, or freelancer, right? You win by aligning your own revenue generation approach with being helpful. And what we've just talked about, both in terms of communication and being someone who solves and heals pain, someone who goes after people who are stuck in a rut, all those things that cause people stress, being a stress resolver, right, is important and valuable. And if you align your revenue generation with that, you will generate more revenue. So if you want to be helpful, right? If there's one thing and you've been waiting this whole time going, what? He said it was going to be one thing, and what is the one thing, right? How many of you own Bose headphones? Noise canceling ones to get on a plane, right? I own them. I love them. I haven't flown without them for more than 10 years, right? But you know what that does? I get on the plane, and I put them on before I get on the plane. Like, I'm walking down the bridge to get on the plane. I put them on, I turn them on, because what I'm communicating to the people around me is, you are a stranger, and I would like to not talk to you. Right? That is essentially what I'm doing. And if I don't have my headphones, which I always do, but if I didn't, right, I at least have a computer or a book, something that suggests that I don't want to talk with strangers. But the truth is that I go to events, conferences like these, and I probably have 100 conversations with strangers at least 2 weekends, a minimum 1 weekend a month. I'm constantly talking to strangers, right? If you saw me in an airport or an airplane, you'd think he doesn't like strangers. Well, in an airplane, I like to take naps. But at these events, right, you'll see me talking to people because there is no more important skill than learning how to talk to strangers. And it turns out the web copy that you put, 75% of the people that visit your website are strangers. Every month. I know you think you have an audience. You don't. right? Sorry. You don't. Everybody who talks about, well, the people that listen to my podcast, you're like, have you talked to them by name? Do you know these people? Well, it's my audience. You don't have an audience. Shut it. People who write websites, blogs. I wrote a blog, right, every day for 3 years. And every now and then I would catch myself saying, well, my audience, I'm like, stop. I've seen Google. I know the analytics. 79% of the people that visited my site visited it once only in their entire lives. They never came back. They came to get some piece of information and leave. They came with a pain, with a stress, stuck in a rut, right? Sound familiar? All the things we know people get stuck on, those are all the same reasons people buy. And so I started making adjustments to the website to monetize it, which turns out was very helpful for me. But at the core, it was this one thing: learning to speak to strangers. And more important than speaking, listening. More important than listening, understanding what kind of person I was listening to, what kind of person I was talking to, so that I could shape my message. Within 1 or 2 questions, you figure out, are they an away or towards person? Very quickly you discover, are they internal referencing or external referencing? And you go, okay, now I know how to communicate in a way that is not stressful at all. My name's Chris Lemma. I'm the vice president over a company called Liquid Web. We're a $100 million web company, web hosting company, not 100 millimeter. And you can read my blog over at chrislemma.com. Thank you very much. And with that, I think we're going to open it up for just a couple minutes of Q&A, and we have a microphone right there in the middle of the room if there is any.
Questions and answers?
So you were mentioning to adjust your proposals for one type of person or another. Is you put like quotes of all the different types of communication in the same proposal, like something that like a sentence that would appeal to a toward person, another to a away person, another to an internal, another to an external.
Yeah, so the question is, if you're putting out quotes into a proposal and you're sending it out, testimonials in a quote, do you just spread it around and sprinkle it all so it's good? And my recommendation is not to do that. My recommendation is to have multiple proposals or multiple sets of quotes, and so you have, or testimonials, and so you have a conversation. So I never send out a cold proposal, right? So I've already had a conversation with someone. And if I've had a conversation with someone, I've already figured out, are they a towards person, are they a away person, are they internal or external referencing? And by understanding that, when I get that proposal ready for them, the quotes are aligned to them. Thanks for asking that great question. I think we had another one somewhere up here, but I don't see them now. Oh, one in the back. Look straight back behind you. Straight. There you go.
How do you feel about customer personas?
Yeah, the question is, how do I feel about personas? If you have never heard of personas or thought about personas are the kind of thing that kind of ran rampant over the course of about 15 years, helping people understand that they should market to segments. And so I am a huge fan of actual segmentation, understanding the kinds of people that come to your website or come to that you serve, that your products work with, etc. So segmentation, huge fan. If the persona is done right, huge fan, right? There are a lot of personas that are not done so right? And how you know that they're not done so right is a lot of work goes into the creation of the persona. Like, this is Susie. Susie drives a minivan. She has 3 kids. The kids are 9, 10, and 11, which, by the way, you're like, oh my God, I'm sorry, Susie. But then you're like, Susie takes her kids to both soccer and gymnastics. Susie works at a job where she uses Office all day, and you're like, again, sorry. And then, and you're like, all that, and you're like, okay, so here's Susie. But how does that help me write to Susie when the other persona is, this is Frank, Frank's an executive, Frank works at an insurance company, and Frank is very busy, Frank gets up at 5 in the morning, Frank doesn't exercise, Frank did it, and you're like, yeah, but if the persona doesn't help me craft 2 completely different messages, if I don't have enough in the persona that actually distinguishes messaging, then personas are just exercise in futility. And that's why I use other frameworks, because I know, okay, I need to be able to understand that any person fits into one of these matrices, and now let's create campaigns for each of these. You can put names on them and say this is Susie and Billy and Sammy and Frank, but fundamentally it's not about the persona per se, it's about understanding the different messaging that goes on. So personas that drive differentiation in messaging for different segments is awesome. Personas that don't, not so much. Thanks. I think we have one last question, and see if we can get the mic over here. Yeah?
I can talk loud enough.
Sure.
You know, the only issue I have so far, and it's not really an issue, is that we have environments where we have coders that are doing work that was sold by somebody else, and those people aren't necessarily will have heard who is buying the site.
Yes.
And so at least I come from a background of sales, not related to web, and I think the fundamental lesson that people could take away is 2 ears, 1 mouth, which basically means, you know, even if you are...
I tried to craft, what he's saying is that one of the challenges is there's developers, and the developers don't actually interact with customers, and so there's a pretty big gap. And then he said the summary of one of the takeaways in my talk could be 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? So do more listening than speaking, except that would have been a much shorter talk. And I had to use up all the minutes. So, I mean, I appreciate it, but I couldn't go that route. The core of the issue here is if your developers and your sales are if your developers on anything are really that far away from customers, you need to shrink that, right? So whether it is getting developers on support desk every now and then and getting actual interactions with customers, or whether it's taking them out into the field. I've taken developers out into a customer site to watch people work, and they go, oh my God, I never knew this was happening. But that is a core problem you need to resolve, unrelated to this talk. But yes, it's very, very important. Thank you. And with that, thank you very much. Take care. Have a great conference.